If you've ever been alone on a train late at night, you already know that feeling. That quiet that isn't really quiet. Every movement, every person sitting just a little too close. You brush it off. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. But sometimes you're not. I was 24 years old, traveling from Chicago to Milwaukee on a late-night Amtrak. It was a Thursday, middle of February, and the platform was nearly empty when I boarded. I had a window seat toward the back of the car, a carry-on bag in the overhead rack, and earbuds in. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just trying to get home. The train was maybe a quarter full. A few business travelers, a couple of college kids up front, an older woman reading a paperback 2 rows ahead of me. Normal, quiet, completely unremarkable. I don't remember exactly when I noticed him. He was sitting across the aisle and 1 row back. Middle-aged, heavy build, wearing a dark jacket with the collar turned up. His hands were resting on his knees, and he wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't reading, wasn't sleeping. He was just sitting there, staring straight ahead. I noticed him the way you notice something slightly out of place but can't quite name it. I pulled out one earbud and leaned back, trying to relax. About 20 minutes into the ride, I got up to use the restroom at the end of the car. When I came back, my bag had been moved. Not thrown on the floor, not left open. Just shifted. The zipper was at a different angle than I'd left it. I sat down slowly and looked through it. My wallet was there. My phone charger was there. But a small folded piece of paper I'd had tucked in the front pocket, a note with my sister's new address on it, was gone. I told myself I'd misplaced it. Maybe it fell out. Maybe I was wrong about where I'd put it. People lose things. That's normal. So I sat back down and put my earbud back in. But I didn't stop watching him. He hadn't moved. Still staring forward. Still completely still in a way that didn't feel like peace. It felt like patience. The train made its first stop at a small station just outside Glenview. A few people got off. Nobody got on. The car got quieter. The lights inside seemed dimmer somehow, though I knew they hadn't changed. I checked my phone. It was 11:42. We were about 40 minutes from Milwaukee. That's when he stood up. He didn't go to the restroom. He didn't stretch. He walked slowly up the aisle toward the front of the car, and as he passed my row, he stopped. Just for a second. He looked directly at me. Not a glance. Not an accidental moment of eye contact. He looked at me the way someone looks at something they've already decided about. Then he kept walking and disappeared through the door at the front of the car. I sat there with my heart doing something I couldn't control. I checked the doors. I looked at the other passengers. The older woman was still reading. The college kids were both asleep. I was the only one who seemed to feel it. That pressure in the air that comes before something goes wrong. 5 minutes passed. 10. He didn't come back. I got up. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I just needed to see where he went, needed to confirm he was just in another car and I was losing my mind. I walked to the front of the car and pushed through the door into the connector between cars. Cold. Loud. The metal floor rattling under my feet. I looked through the window into the next car. He was standing at the far end of it, talking to someone. A younger guy I hadn't seen before, maybe late 20s, hoodie, backpack on the seat beside him. They weren't just chatting. The man in the dark jacket was leaning over the younger guy, one hand on the headrest, and the younger guy's body language was all wrong. Shoulders up, hands in his lap, eyes forward. He looked frozen. I went back to my seat, and I called 911. I told them I was on an Amtrak train between Chicago and Milwaukee, that I thought something was wrong, that a man had gone through my bag and was now in the next car appearing to threaten another passenger. The dispatcher asked me to stay on the line. I could hear them contacting the train's operations center. About 3 minutes later, the conductor came through my car moving fast. Then another staff member behind him. They went into the next car. I pressed my face close to the window and the door and watched. The man in the dark jacket straightened up when they approached. He said something, gesturing with his hands, the body language of someone trying to explain themselves. The younger guy stood up immediately and moved away from him, toward the conductor. That told me everything. By the time we pulled into Milwaukee, there were 2 officers on the platform waiting. I gave a statement. I learned, standing there under the harsh yellow lights of the station at midnight, that the younger passenger had been approached by the man who claimed they knew each other, that the younger guy had never met him before in his life, and that the man had been pressuring him quietly for the better part of 20 minutes, telling him things that made the kid too scared to get up or call for help. They found my sister's address in his jacket pocket. The detective who took my statement didn't give me a lot of details, but he told me the man had done this before. That trains were, in his words, controlled environments. People feel trapped. They feel like causing a scene is worse than enduring whatever is happening to them, and predators know that. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my sister's kitchen with the lights on and replayed every moment from the time I boarded that train. The way he was already seated when I got on. The way my bag had been touched while I was gone for less than 2 minutes. The way he looked at me when he passed. He wasn't random. He had been watching the car, deciding. And for whatever reason, he decided on someone else that night. I almost didn't get on that train, and I think about that every single day. Because if I had just waited for the next one, none of this would have happened. Or maybe it would have happened to someone else. I don't know which thought scares me more. It was February. I was coming back from a work trip that had run 3 days longer than it was supposed to. I was exhausted, I was irritable, and all I wanted was to get home to my apartment and sleep for about 14 hours straight. The last train of the night was boarding in 10 minutes, and I was running through Union Station with my bag bouncing off my hip and my coffee going cold in my hand. I made it. Barely. Slid into a seat near the middle of the car, threw my bag in the overhead rack, and let out this long, slow breath. The car wasn't full. Maybe a third of the seats were taken. Mostly business travelers, a few people in headphones. Normal. Quiet, exactly what I needed. The train pulled out right on time, and for the first 20 minutes everything was fine. I had my headphones in, wasn't really listening to anything, just using them to keep people from talking to me. The lights in the car were dim. That's when he sat down next to me. There were empty rows all around. I want you to understand that. He had choices, but he chose the seat right beside me, pressed up against the window side, and dropped a duffel bag between his feet with this heavy thud that I felt more than heard. I pulled one earbud out and glanced over. He was maybe late 30s, plain-looking, forgettable face. Dark jacket, jeans. Nothing about him screamed anything. He smiled at me, polite, normal. I nodded and put my earbud back in. He started talking anyway. At first it was just small stuff. Where was I headed? Long day. Trains are better than flying, you know. I gave short answers, kept my eyes forward, doing everything you're supposed to do when you don't want a conversation. He didn't take any of it. He just kept going, easy and relaxed, like we were old friends catching up. I told myself he was just lonely, bored, one of those people who can't sit in silence. But then something shifted. He asked me what I did for work. I told him I was in logistics, kept it vague. He nodded like that meant something to him, and then he said, very casually, I used to work in a warehouse outside Charlotte. I hadn't told him I was going to Charlotte. I felt it before I understood it. That cold, dropping feeling in your chest, like your body clocks the danger before your brain catches up. I kept my face still, kept breathing, told myself I must have mentioned it somehow, or maybe he saw something on my bag tag. I looked for an excuse because I didn't want the alternative to be true. He kept talking. He told me about the warehouse, about the job, about how he'd left under bad circumstances. His tone never changed. Still calm, still conversational. But the things he was saying started to get strange. He talked about a coworker who'd reported him. Said the guy had no idea what he'd started. Said some people don't understand that actions have consequences that follow them home. Follow them home. I shifted in my seat, pulled my bag from the overhead rack and set it on my lap without making it obvious I was doing it deliberately. I was thinking about moving cars. I was thinking about finding the conductor. He noticed. I know he did because he smiled again just slightly and said, "You're not from Atlanta, are you? You've got that Charlotte look." My stomach dropped completely. I stood up. I told him I needed to use the restroom. He moved his legs to let me out without saying a word, and as I slid past him, he looked up at me and said, very quietly, "Don't take too long." I walked to the end of the car, through the door, into the connector between cars, and just stood there for a second in the rattling, cold air between them, trying to think. I kept moving. Into the next car. Found the conductor, a heavy-set guy in his 50s, and I told him quietly that the man in my car was making me uncomfortable, that he'd said things that felt threatening. The conductor listened. He didn't dismiss me. He walked back with me and I pointed out the seat. It was empty. The duffel bag was gone. The man was gone like he'd never been there. The conductor checked the bathrooms, walked the full length of the train. Nothing. He came back and told me the man might have gotten off at the Glenview stop while I was in the other car. It was the only stop we'd made. He said it gently, like maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe I had. That's what I kept telling myself for the rest of the ride. I sat in a different seat, closer to other people, and I watched the dark fields roll by and I told myself I'd misread it, that the guy was just weird and I'd filled in the gaps with fear. I got off at 11:47 at night, called a cab instead of walking to my car in the structure like I normally would have, got home, locked the door. The next morning I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 11 seconds of silence. Then, at the very end, the sound of a train, that specific rhythm, that steel-on-rail sound. Like he'd recorded it and saved it and waited until I was home to send it. I've never been able to prove it was him. I don't even know his name. The transit authority pulled the boarding records for that night and said they had no way to identify every passenger. The call came from a prepaid number that was never used again. But I know what I heard on that train. I know what he said and how he said it and the way he smiled when I got up to leave. It was February, middle of winter, somewhere between Chicago and a small town in Indiana I'd never heard of before that night. Nothing special, just a regular Thursday night on a train with maybe 30 other passengers scattered across the car. Most of them were asleep. A few had headphones in. I had a window seat near the back, watching the snow come down outside, completely zoned out. That's when I noticed the man in the green jacket. He got on at the last stop. I remember because the door's opening let in a blast of cold air that made everyone flinch. He walked down the aisle slowly, taking his time, looking at every seat like he was deciding something. He was older, maybe mid-50s, with a thick beard and a duffel bag over one shoulder. Nothing alarming about that. People get on trains. That's what trains are for. But he sat down across the aisle from me, even though there were at least a dozen empty rows ahead. I didn't think much of it at first. I put my earbuds in, pulled my jacket tighter and stared back out the window. Outside was nothing but flat, dark land and snow. We were somewhere in the middle of Indiana, far from anything. The kind of stretch where you can go 20 minutes without seeing a single light. About 10 minutes after he sat down, I noticed he wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't reading, wasn't sleeping. He was just sitting there completely still, both hands resting flat on his knees, staring straight ahead. Not at me, just forward, rigid, like a man waiting for something. I told myself I was being paranoid. Tired people sit still, it doesn't mean anything. Then he started talking to himself, not loudly. I couldn't even hear it, I could see his lips moving. Fast. Like he was working through something in his head and couldn't stop it from coming out. His jaw was tight. His hands were still flat on his knees, but his fingers had started pressing down hard, like he was trying to hold himself in place. I took one earbud out. I could hear it then. A low, rapid murmur. Numbers maybe, or names. I couldn't make it out clearly, but the rhythm of it was wrong. It wasn't casual, it was urgent. Like something you say when you're scared or when you're trying not to do something. The woman 2 rows ahead of him glanced back once, then looked away quickly. She felt it too. Whatever was happening, she didn't want any part of it. I started paying attention to the exits. There was the front of the car, back of the car, and that was it. We were moving at full speed through open farmland, 30 minutes from the next station. I was aware of exactly how locked in I was. Every passenger in that car was. Then he stopped muttering. The silence was worse somehow. He slowly reached down and unzipped his duffel bag, just the top. He didn't pull anything out. He just unzipped it and put his hand inside and left it there. My heart dropped. I want to be honest, I didn't know what was in that bag. Could have been anything. A water bottle, a jacket. But something about the way he did it, slow and deliberate, like he'd been building up to that exact moment the whole time, made every hair on my body stand up. I stood up. I didn't think about it, I just did it. I grabbed my bag, stepped into the aisle, and walked to the front of the car like I was just going to the bathroom. Casual as I could manage. I didn't look at him. I went through the door into the next car and immediately found the train attendant, a young guy named Marcus, sitting near the front. I told him quietly exactly what I'd seen. The stillness, the muttering, the hand in the bag. I told him I didn't know if anything was wrong, but something felt wrong. Marcus didn't brush me off. He got on his radio immediately. What happened next I only partially witnessed because they asked me to stay in the forward car and keep calm. But I heard it. The train didn't stop at the next station. It stopped early, in a small town called Rensselaer, and when those doors opened, there were police waiting on the platform. They found a loaded handgun in that duffel bag. The man had no carry permit, no explanation that held up, and a history I found out about later through a news brief posted by a local Indiana outlet. He'd had a psychiatric crisis 2 weeks before. He'd made statements to someone close to him, statements about not being able to take it anymore, about doing something that couldn't be undone. 31 people in that train car that night. I don't know what he was planning exactly. I don't know if he was planning anything specific or if he was just sitting there on the edge, waiting to see which way he'd fall. I don't know if he would have actually done something or if the night would have ended without incident. But I do know this. Nobody else said anything. I watched that car from the doorway after it was over, while the police were still on the platform, and I asked Marcus. I asked him if anyone else had come forward. He said no. He said I was the only one. 30 people sat in that car, most of them awake, most of them clearly uncomfortable, and not one of them said a word. I still take trains sometimes. I still watch the people who get on at late stops, who sit too close when the car is empty, who go too still for too long. I don't think I'll ever stop watching. Some things you can't unlearn. And once you understand how fast a normal night can turn, how quietly it can happen, right next to you while everyone else has their headphones in, you start paying attention in a way you never did before. You start realizing how many times you were probably fine, and how many times you might not have been. If these stories scares you even a little, hit that like button right now. If you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications. If something that happened to you, a friend, a family member, send it in the comments. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.